Welcome to Brain Snacks, bite-sized learning moments from Live and Work More Human. To learn more, check out the full conversation at the link in the show notes or visit liveandworkmorehuman.com. It's now, enjoy.
Before we dive into the full episode, here's a quick message from our podcast partners. What if every organization could deeply understand and optimize the potential of its greatest asset, its people?
Humanico blends cutting-edge insight with powerful organisational intelligence to give leaders a single, clear map of their people and how they thrive.
Cut through the noise of disconnected tools and surveys. Humanico brings it all together into one dynamic, intuitive platform, empowering better decisions, wiser strategies, and stronger teams, so humans and organisations flourish.
Humanico, putting people first at every level. To learn more, visit humanico.co/live and work more human. That's humanico.co/live and work more human.
I think we've all had a feeling at some point or another, whether it's in leadership or outside of leadership, quite frankly, even in life, of feeling blocked, feeling stuck, feeling like we're not getting the outcomes that we actually desire in our role or with our team or in our career, whatever it might be, even in our communication. And that feeling of being blocked actually shows up differently for different people, right? But one of the things is understanding, like, how do I know that I'm blocked? Sometimes you need that external kind of input to let you know that you're blocked, but really understanding for yourself, something is off. So that's what I mean when somebody's blocked. But what I have been really curious about is what leads to a person being blocked. And oftentimes what we tend to do is look at the behaviors, what the person is doing, what that leader is doing or not doing. And I became really curious over some time, recognizing that it actually goes beyond the behaviors. It's about the beliefs that drive those behaviors, and how are those beliefs either helping you or actually getting in the way, and therefore keeping you in this blocked state that I just expressed.
I love that you're going deep there, Muriel, that is not these kind of superficial, almost after the fact symptoms perhaps of these beliefs, but it's going to almost the root cause, as it were. Am I understanding that framing correctly?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because part of what happened, Sally, is I've worked with leaders for a long time. I've been doing executive coaching for over 20 years. And basically I was a very action-oriented coach with my clients, where we were looking directly at, like, okay, what do you do? Right? Let's come up with the 3 things, the 4 things. And they would go and do them, but it wouldn't be sustainable. And as a coach, I really wanted the work to be sustainable, that it would last. And as I started studying a lot more and learning a lot more about human behavior, really around what drove behavior, I started to understand more around the beliefs, the narratives, the stories that we tell ourselves, the operating system that then leads to those behaviors. But what I found is that while a lot of that language was in parenting books and relationship books and all the life books, not much of this is spoken about in the workplace around the assumptions that we bring into work and how they then impact how we work and ultimately, for me, how we lead.
That's a really important point to make, Muriel, because I think for a long time we've expected that who we are at work and who we are at home don't intersect. And we've always been told to leave that at the door. So it's a very powerful way of framing this idea that we are a whole person all of the time. And in fact, these blockages that we maybe have developed over a period of time, be it personal or through our career, actually do impact the way we work. Now, your book really beautifully looks at 7 of these different blockers. I'd love it if we could. Can we double click on this for a minute? Can you help us explore what are these 7 different blockers?
Sure.
And we'd love to know from you, Muriel, have you experienced any of these yourself in your career as well?
Where do we begin?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, let me take a step back. So when I talk about the blockers, it's literally the belief or the mantra that you tell yourself. There are these, if you think about sometimes, right, if you sit back and think about what is a repetitive thing that I tend to have an inner dialogue, something that just keeps coming up in my head, that sometimes I'm not even conscious of, which is what I find with a lot of people. And it's not to say that the 7 that I'm about to mention are the only ones. They're the ones that bubbled up to the top. When I looked across 300 clients, I noticed that there was a pattern, and there were these 7 that tended to be the most popular ones that came up for individuals. But certainly there can be others. So the 7 that came up were I need to be involved. I can't make a mistake.
Mm,
I know I'm right. If I can do it, so can you. That's one of my favorites. It was the big surprise. I need it done now. I can't say no, and I don't belong here. And they are so simple, just these short little statements, but they're these quiet voices that actually have such a loud impact in the way that individuals lead, right?
yeah.
And so what I saw is that these little mantras could actually then have quite a ripple effect, not just in terms of the leader's behavior, but also how other people were experiencing that leadership.
Muriel, what I find most fascinating about the 7 blockers in your book is that as someone who's experienced probably all 7 at different points in my career, I would say the impact for me on my leadership is that they force me into almost like this fear-based scarcity type of leadership. I feel so for me, the one that came up the most was I need to be involved, but also
Mm,
there were a few others like I know I'm right and these kinds of things. And what to me they really highlighted was that they drive leadership behavior in a really negative way.
mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
I'd love to know, can you help us unpack some of these a little further? Maybe we can start with mine. I need to be involved. What are some of the negative repercussions that you see leaders who maybe experience this blocker behaving like? And what might someone like me who leads with that lens do to sort of
Yeah.
calm that barrier a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Alexis. And by the way, that was one of the ones that I experienced. In fact, like you, I
Yeah.
experienced all of these at some point or another. Writing this book was actually really cathartic
No doubt.
because, I would get to the next chapter, and then by the end, I'd be like, damn it, I have this one too.
Yeah.
You know?
And I suspect a lot of leaders have experienced one or all of them at
Right,
different scenarios,
exactly. And
right?
and
Yeah.
what's interesting about that actually is it's not that these beliefs and these are always blockers, right? It's not that they are bad. It's just that they don't always support you, and it's recognizing when they do support you and when they don't, rather than having them on all the time. So if we look at the I need to be involved, clearly, for example, Alexis, if you were, when you were early in your career and maybe you had like a very discreet job. I know for me, my first job out of college was, I'm going to date myself here, but it was responsible for direct mail, right? And I was responsible for the message that was printed on the insurance bill that these insurance holders would receive. That is all I was responsible for. So did I need to be really, really involved in making sure that every letter, every spacing, every little thing was correct? Absolutely. Belief served me extremely well in that capacity. But as I scaled in my leadership, and this is where I see to your question around where does it get in the way, it particularly gets in the way when leaders have to scale, when they start managing others or they start managing those who manage. The scalability of a leader, where quite frankly, they don't have the sheer physical capacity to be involved in everything that they want to or that they feel a need to be involved in. And so that is probably the biggest barrier. They are often the ones who are called micromanagers because literally they want to be CC'd on everything. They want to be in every meeting. They want to make sure that they weigh in on everything. Nothing can happen without them being involved because of this need.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about it is what drives the need. And as you said, a lot of it is fear based. And for those who hold the belief, I need to be involved, there is, when you really sort of start scratching on that belief, there's an underlying belief that they will not be safe if they're not involved. Okay, so it comes down to this human value that we have around safety that basically all hell will break loose if they're not involved. So therefore, they're going to be involved. Okay, so yes.
I think it's such an important point to underscore, Muriel, because my, and I too have experienced all 7, but particularly I can't make a mistake, which served me really well as a junior lawyer, but not so much sort of, as you mentioned, sort of when you're starting to shift into different roles and managing people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when we really understand that it's not just, it can manifest in this kind of controlling behavior, but what's driving it is really this deep fear, and it can be quite intense, almost a sort of a terror that's kind of underpinning that. And I think it's that sort of deeper work and understanding that root cause is so important for us, rather than just blaming what seems to be happening in the moment.
That's right. That's right. And what's really important here, Sally and Alexis, is that even as uncovering what is underlying the belief, that's going to be different individual to individual, right? So even the I can't make a mistake one, yes, one of it can be around control. The other piece of it is where I see folks who have that belief is that it doesn't necessarily lead to control. They actually are quite the opposite. They're trying to get everybody involved, consensus. They don't want conflict to happen, because if it creates a mistake, then they're concerned they're not going to be accepted by the group, right? So it's grounded in something very different. But both show, but then there can be something else that drives it. So understanding your story and the origin of it, which is kind of the unpacking of the belief, is quite critical because it's not universal for everyone.
We hope you enjoyed this brain snack from Live and Work More Human. Learn more at www.liveandworkmorehuman.com. See you next time.